Hello folks, this is Johnny again, and in today's video I would like to introduce you to Spark, Mercuriall's new amp simulation flagship. So this one simulates 4 Marshall amps and has a couple of other really great features. But before we go into any details, let's just check out what it sounds like in a mixing context. So here's a little 2-minute demo I came up with, and we'll get into the meaty stuff afterwards. Okay, I guess at this point we don't really have to talk about the quality of the amp simulation anymore. In today's generation, it's gotten so good that all the weak points of the digital replication just aren't there anymore. And Spark kind of reminded me of that again. Bottom line, it just sounds great. So, let's just focus on the features and the general vibe it has. Because although each amp simulator that's out these days does a great job in itself, all of them kind of have their own sound to them, their own vibe, their own feel. So how does Spark do? So as I said really quick in the beginning, Spark simulates 4 Marshall amps. And to be honest, I was a little bit skeptical at first because I'm not that much of a fan of Marshall. Though, disclaimer, I only have experience with amp modeling. I don't have any experience with the real amps. But with those, I was generally always into the Mesa Boogie stuff, the Engel stuff, or for clean tones, Fender and Vox. And Marshall never really sparked my interest. Sorry, I just had to. But this one right here did make me reconsider. You can get great clean tones, great mid-gain tones. Great high gain tones. You can go from soft to grunge to stoner to hard rock to metal and down to really modern genty tones. But in all of that, you do notice the slight lean towards a kind of rockish side, which is to be expected. This is Marshall after all. And you notice that in the clean tones, they have this kind of mid-range focus. You notice that in the high gain tones, they have this kind of crunchiness to them, which I personally quite like. But overall, I think Spark just covers a really big palette for what it is. With only 4 amps and 4 cabs and 3 mics and 4 stomp boxes, you can get a lot out of it. It's very focused. I think this is pretty good for people who are rather overwhelmed by the quantity of some of the other amp simulators that provide dozens of amps and caps and pedals, and you don't know where to begin. So let's talk about the plugin itself here. We got it right here. As you can see, it looks very familiar. If you already know the U530 from Mercuriall, then it will be quite easy to get into this one. Let's just go from top to bottom. So over here we have the noise gate. I quite like the noise gate. It's very nice and tight, but it doesn't cut where it's not supposed to. It works really well. Threshold and is that resolution, I suppose, or something, at noon works perfectly fine, and then dial in the release how you want it. Short release for nice tight gating. Then we have 4 stomp boxes. The Tube Screamer and the Tube Screamer mod are an improved version of the TSC plugin that Mercuriall brought out some time back. So that's very familiar. And then there is also a Tube Screamer 7 with the hot switch turned on. So this can give you a bit more of a smudgier tone, if you like. And then a Mesa Boogie Grid Slammer. And this one sounds a bit brighter and crunchier than the Tube Screamer. You can get quite the characteristic pick attack with that one. And here in the middle, we have the caps section. As I said, 4 caps. It's all pretty much self-explanatory what those are. And then 3 mics, also self-explanatory. And we also have 2 mics this time, so we can use dual mic configurations. Also down here's the mix knob then. Then over here we have 2 preamp tubes to choose from and 2 power amp tubes to choose from. And there's oversampling. I do recommend to turn that one off, especially for recording, because this can become quite CPU heavy. If you want to use oversampling, then you definitely should bounce the tracks. My recommendation anyways. And then this time around we also have stereo processing, unlike the U530. So you can load this plugin onto a bus and send 2 DI tracks to that, pan those hard, and you're good to go. And then down here an input level, so you can attenuate how hot the signal would go into the amp modeling, and also compensating with the output level is possible. And then we have an FX section here. So with a chorus, that's 3 knobs, simple to set up, a reverb, with a couple of reverb modes you can choose from. I recommend the Stadium one if you want to get a big ambient tone. And then a delay that's also pretty much self-explanatory how it works. Perhaps the low cut and high cut and decay are a little bit interesting to set up with this one. It took me a couple of minutes to get used to it. But once you get the hang of it, you can get some really cool filtering effects in the delay, and this is very much usable. And then let's come to the amp section. So first thing I kind of want to address is I really like how the master knob reacts to the tone and what kind of an impact it has. With most other amp simulators I tried out, the master knob just adds volume and a little bit of saturation. But it doesn't have that much of an impact on the tone itself, so I tend to just leave it at default values. With this one, you do get quite a level of tweakability. When you dial it down, you notice the tone becomes more scooped. You know what, let's just try it out. And when you dial it up, it becomes richer. But of course, you also need to compensate again with the output level to notice the difference. Okay, now let's turn it up. Turn this one down. See, it's quite different. And then when you also turn up the master knob, you hear quite the difference in the power amp tubes. Yeah, something around those lines. So the master knob here is definitely nothing to ignore. And then each amp has 2 channels, as you can see here on the right. And for the 800 and AFD, that means channel 1 is high gain and channel 2 is low gain. Though on the AFD, channel 2 is a bit more gritty and crunchy. It's not really all that clean. On the 800, however, you do get quite the clean tone. Fair warning though, it drops in volume quite a bit, so you need to compensate with the output level. In general, the AFD, as far as I know, is a custom amp from Slash. At first I thought, well, Slash is kind of the rock guitarist, but you can get very modern sounding tones with this, as you heard in the demo. I also really like this little switch down here. It's like, now I don't know the real amp, I don't know what exactly it does, but it sounds to me like it switches the frequency balance of the input signal like this. So the low end is rolled off and the high end is boosted, and that makes for a brighter and very crunchy tone, which I personally quite like again. But fair warning, don't use a stomp pedal beforehand if you turn that switch on, otherwise it will get unbearably harsh. You know what, let's just try this out a little bit. So you see how crunchy it gets, and yeah, again, it can get a bit harsh, but you can compensate with the EQ section and also post-EQing, of course. Then the 800, with this one, you can get more of a traditional high gain tone that I also quite like. Yeah, it's definitely very much usable. I'm getting more and more into this kind of more rockish, crunchy tone and away from this modern, smooth and even out tone. So this is very much something to look out for. And then the bass 67 and lead 68 are kind of low gain to mid gained amps, and channel 1 in this configuration means a bright channel, and channel 2 more of a normal channel, I guess. It definitely sounds darker than channel 1. And if you want to get really clean tones with those, again, you should dial down the gain quite a bit to get it really clean. And again, the volume will drop quite a bit, so you have to compensate. And also, if you are running hot pickups, you may want to adjust the input level, at least for clean tones, you know. So, and that's pretty much just about it. Bottom line, summing up, Spark is a very solid piece of amp simulation software. It quite surprised me what you can get out of it. It definitely doesn't have as much to offer as other amp simulators, but you can just about get the same spectrum of tones out of it. So if you don't like fiddling with a lot of stuff, then I think this is very much for you. The sound is great, and the capabilities are just as great. So it's got my 2 thumbs up, very much recommended. Now that's it for my review. I hope you liked it. Please subscribe, like, leave a comment below, and I will see you next time.